recording. Okay, cool. Okay, one sec. Hold that thought. Okay, here you go. Boom. Here are the answers to the homework. Take a look at what I got. Compare it with what you got. It's page 31. Okay, compare what you got with what I got. Yep, let's go up. There you go. Compare what you got with what I got. Does anyone want me to go over any questions on the first page? Going once. Thrice. Sold. Flipping the page. Okay. These ones. Take a look. Compare what you got with what I got. Would anyone like me to compare? Sorry. Would anyone like me to explain? Yes, Zara. Number 14. How did I do it? Okay, here we go. Well, let's show the other questions first. I'll show you the bottom two. There's the bottom two, and then I'll go back and do number 14. I can delete you. I can delete you. I can delete you. I can close you. Delete you. Okay, so question 14. Here it is. I'll zoom in, and I'll show you what I did. Actually, I'll do even better. Let's go to the blank one, the non-answer key, and I'll show you how we did this. Okay, so dividing fractions. Dividing fractions. The first step was to make anything mixed improper. There's nothing mixed, gentlemen. So let's go straight to dealing with the fractions. We don't divide fractions. We flip one of them, and we turn it into multiplication. You always flip the one that comes immediately after the division. So if I'm dividing by 3/5, I'm going to change that into multiplication by 12 over 3. And the first fraction stays. So it's 2/5 times 12 over 3. And for the sake of where we're going, I'm not going to simplify anything here yet. I could reduce something. Actually, maybe you'd like me to. Should I reduce this? I could. 12 and 3 are both divisible by 3. So I say, okay, well, that's divisible by 3. That's divisible by 3. And so my question is going to change. I'm going to get 2 over 5 times 12 divided by 3 is 4. 3 divided by 3 is 1. And that's as simple as we get. And now I'm going to multiply across the top. I'm going to multiply across the bottom. And I'm going to get 2 times 4 is 8. 5 times 1 is 5. 8 over 5. And we're done. Because the question doesn't say anything about converting to mixed. That's how I did question 14. Zara, does that make sense? If you want, you could just do the multiplication straight across. If you did that, what you'd get is 24 over 15, and then you'd need to recognize that both of these are divisible by 3. Divide by 3, and you'd get 24 over 3 is 8, 15 over 3 is 5. You get the same result, but there is that extra piece where perhaps we don't remember that both of these are divisible by 3. Is there anything else out of the homework anyone would like me to do? No. Okay. Then I would like you to flip the page. Let's do today's lesson before we lose our football player. What's going on? Acom. Okay. John, where's Faison's phone? Faison, where's your phone? It should be in your pocket. It should be gone. Gentlemen, I think it was the other class. I'll give you the same speech I gave the other class. If something doesn't belong to you in this class and it wasn't given to you by the owner, don't touch it. There's no reason Faison should have to ask for his phone because that means he didn't give it to you. Which means if he didn't give it to you, you shouldn't touch it. It's really not difficult. Acom and John, I don't care who it was. I'm going to hold you equally guilty this time. Doesn't belong to you, don't touch it. Okay, here we go. Negatives. We've already established how much y'all love negatives. So today's lesson is all about remembering how to deal with negatives as they relate to fractions. When you're working with negatives and fractions, you're going to see it written a couple different ways. One of the ways that negatives shows up in a fraction is like this. We have the negative out front, and we have 1 over 2. If you recall, what is a fraction? Like, what is the point of writing things as fractions? Sorry, who just said that? It's the same as division. Okay? So if I ignore this for a sec, I say, okay, ignore the minus sign for a sec. What is 1 divided by 2? Well, that's one of those decimals I wanted you to remember. 1 over 2 is? It's a half, so 0.5. Well, if I just have a negative out front, what that means is I do the division first, 1 over 2. 1 divided by 2 is 0.5. And then I tack that negative on there at the end. That's just negative 0.5. Oh, okay, nice and easy. What happens if the negative sign is up in the numerator? Well, that means it's negative 1 divided by 2. What happens if I have a negative number divided by a positive number? My result is going to be positive or negative? Which one? It's going to be negative. And then 1 divided by 2, well, that's just 0.5. So negative 1 divided by 2 is just going to be negative 0.5. And likewise, if I have positive 1 divided by negative 2, if I have a positive divided by a negative, it's going to be negative. And the rest of it follows the exact same way. 1 divided by 2 is 0.5. The result is the same, Scarlett. Doesn't matter where I put the minus sign. So whether or not you leave it out front, you move it up to the numerator, or it shows up in the denominator, all three mean the same thing. Now, conventionally, in math, you will almost always only see 2 of these 3. When we're dealing with rational numbers, so like there's no letters in here, no variables yet, don't worry, it's coming. When we're dealing with just numbers, these are the only two you'll see. Either the negative sign will be out front, or the negative sign will be in the numerator. We will almost never see this. Almost never see. As long as we are just dealing with numbers, the only reason you'd see something like that is if someone was trying to get you. Someone like me, your math teacher, to verify that you understand what's actually going on here, that you can move around and work with something like this. But otherwise, unless we've got an expression with variables and things, or maybe we're playing with exponents next chapter, you're almost never going to see a negative sign of the denominator like that. It's just not going to happen. So, does the position of the negative sign matter? I'm trying to convince you that no, it doesn't. As long as you only write one negative sign. What if I have 2 negative signs? What if I have something like this? Negative out front, negative 1 over 2. Well, anywhere you see a double negative like that, what's it going to happen? This is the same as, if you remember what I did over here, this is the same thing as negative 1 divided by 2 times negative 1. Well, that double negative is going to make this thing positive, and I'm going to write this as the fraction, 1 over 2. That double negative is going to make this thing positive. What happens if I have this? Negative 1 over negative 2. Well, this is proper division. This is negative 1 divided by negative 2. When I multiply 2 negatives, I get a positive. So when I divide 2 negatives, I'm going to get a positive as well. So this is going to be positive 1 over 2 as well. That double negative one more time and I will move you, Acom. Double negative is going to give you something positive. So, let's take a look at how that impacts the basic algebra we've been doing here today. Today's lesson is not very long, so let's play with it. Make sure you're comfortable with it. This is subtraction. We've done it already. If I have 3/5 minus 2/5, just by using something we've already done to kind of review this concept, because my denominators are already the same, how do I subtract these two things? Carson, I see that hand. You put up a hand. How do I subtract fractions? Is that not your hand? Would you like to phone a friend? Alex, how do I, before you leave for football, how do I subtract fractions? The first one. Exactly. I just subtract the top two numbers. So what we're doing here, it's very similar to what we're going to do with these negatives. When you guys were subtracting fractions, you made a common denominator and then you subtracted the top numbers. This is the same thing here. What we're going to do is we're going to take this and we're going to move it up into the numerator. We're going to absorb it into the top, and what we're going to get here is this is going to become 3 minus 2 all over 5. We absorb that minus sign into the numerator and deal with it up top. 3 minus 2 is 1. The denominator stays the same. Yes, John, is it a question or a stretch? Okay. Things only become more interesting when we start bringing in minus signs, so let's take a look at this guy. If I have negative 1 over 2 minus 3 over 4, and I want to do this subtraction, what's the first thing we've got to do when we're working with fractions? Thank you, Scarlett. Alex, good luck. The video is going to be posted after school. Hope you win. We need a common denominator. What's a number that 2 and 4 both go into? Someone said 4. They both go into 4. You betcha. What do I multiply 2 by to get to 4? 2. Thank you. Multiply by 2 here, and so then whatever I do to the denominator, I do to the numerator. So negative 1 times 2 is also going to happen here. What I'm going to get is this. Negative 1 times 2 is negative 2, good. 2 times 2 is 4, minus the 3 over 4 stays the way it is. And now I'm just going to bring this minus sign up into the numerator, and I'm going to subtract across the top. Negative 2 minus 3. All over the denominator, which isn't going to change. What's negative 2 minus 3? Negative 5. I'm at a negative value, so if you're struggling with keeping track of your negatives, picture a number line in your head, or we can draw one out. Here we are at negative 2. Negative 1, 0, 1, negative 3, negative 4, negative 5. If I'm here at negative 2 and I'm subtracting a positive number, I'm getting more negative. So this thing's going to be negative 5 over 4. Let's do the last one. I'll zoom out a little bit. I've got negative 1 over 2 minus negative 1 over 3. I need a common denominator. What is a number that 2 and 3 both go into? 6. So what do I have to multiply 2 by to get to 6? So whatever I do to the bottom, I do to the top. And I'm going to take 3 and I'm going to multiply it by 2. Whatever I do to the bottom, I do to the top. And this is going to change things around for me. It's going to give me negative 1 times 3 is negative 3. Do not drop the minus signs, as so many of you guys did on your quiz. Over. Feel free to hand in corrections, by the way, when you get them done. 2 times 3 is 6. Minus negative 2. Because negative 1 times 2 is negative 2. Over 6. And now we're going to bring that subtraction up into the numerator, and things are going to get a little weird. This is the same thing as writing it this way. Negative 3 minus negative 2 all over 6. Just like on your quiz, these double negatives are going to show up here. And some of us need to get more deliberate and clear about how you're writing your work. More of you need to be showing your work the way I show my work. Changing one thing at a time and leaving everything else the way it is. Because then it becomes kind of straightforward to see what happens with that double negative in there. How do I subtract a negative? Subtracting a negative is the same thing as adding. Or you can think of it this way. Look at the number line. If I'm at -3 and I'm taking away something negative, that means I'm becoming more positive. Not all the way positive, because what is -3 minus -2? Also the same thing as -3 plus 2, which is -1 over 6. And I want you guys to get into the habit of absorbing that minus sign, or the negative sign, up into the numerator. So it's the same stuff we were doing, not yesterday, but the day before. It's just being a little bit more deliberate about how we handle negatives. Okay, -2 times a third. When we were multiplying, yes, so this is yesterday's stuff. If I'm multiplying a whole number by a fraction, what's the first step? Yeah, I take the whole number, I put it over 1. And then I do what, Scarlett? How do I multiply fractions? You don't have to tell me what the answer is. I just want you to tell me what to do. Jacob, are you trying to help her? Do you know the answer? When we're multiplying, do we need the same denominator? This is the beauty of multiplying. You can get the same denominator, but it'll just make your life more difficult. You don't have to do that when you multiply or divide. Just when you add or subtract. When we multiply or divide, once we put this thing over 1, we just multiply across the top, and we multiply across the bottom. And you want to make sure when you're dragging that minus sign along for the ride, you include it in the numerator. So, we're just going to go -2 times 1 is -2, and 1 times 3 is 3. And we're done. That's it. That's it. Bring the minus sign along with the numerator. If we need to make a note of that, let's make a note of that. It's best to include the minus sign with the numerator. And it really shows up the most when you're dealing with dividing fractions. Mr. Keeley, you have yourself a good day. Okay. -1/2 divided by -1 over 4. And that negative is explicitly in the numerator. This guy's out front, so the first thing I'm going to encourage you to do every time is to get into the habit of absorbing that thing into the numerator. So, when I'm making my tweaking here, I'm going to rewrite this thing as -1 all over 2. I brought that minus sign up, I absorbed it into the numerator. Now, how do we divide by a fraction? There's a technique for this. Yeah, which one do I flip the second one? Oh, but you were saying things. You were saying the right things, which is why I was calling on you, Jacob. I flip the second fraction. Okay, well, the minus sign is in the numerator. Leave it in the numerator when you make the flip. This thing's going to become -4 over 1. Because I'm trying to convince you it doesn't matter where that negative is. That was the whole point of this discussion at the beginning. It doesn't matter where the negative is. These all mean the same thing. So if you can avoid putting it in the denominator, avoid putting it in the denominator. Don't do it. So then when we take the reciprocal, it's the word for flipping the fraction, what happens with that division? Tob and Jacob turns into multiplication. I want to make sure you're saying the same thing, and you are. Turns into multiplication. And now we multiply across the top, multiply across the bottom. -1 times -4 is +4. 2 times 1 is, and the last step is always, when you've got a fraction, simplify. Divide top and bottom by, what's up? You what? Oh, good luck. This is the end of the lesson. Anything else will show up in the video, but we're done. The homework is going to be the next page. And that's it. See you tomorrow. 4 divided by 2 is 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1. 2 over 1 is just 2. And it's over. We could have made a simplification, but that's really it. So, here is what I'd like you to do. This is just, it's the same stuff we've already done. It's just being really deliberate about how we play with minus signs. And based on what I saw in the quiz, I feel like this could be a useful exercise for a bunch of you. I would like us, we're going to go through, I'm not going to do anything beyond this today. I mean, with my other class, I said in a half an hour I'd like to move on, but nobody in the other class got everything done. So, we'll try it. I'll say in a half an hour, we'll see where you guys are at. But I want you to try these 16 questions. It's more of the stuff that we've been doing for the last 2 days, except minus signs are going to show up in more awkward places. I want you guys to do all these questions. When you're done, I've got an answer key. Let me know if you need to see it. If you've got questions while you're going, I'll be floating around. This is what we're doing today. On your page 34, on your mark, get set, go. Here it is.